Hi, in this lesson, we'll be exploring the term ratio. We will be learning a lot about ratios in many of the next lessons, so this makes sense. Let's start with the definition. A ratio is a comparison of two numbers by division. It's a very simple definition, but it would certainly work for what we're doing. So go ahead on your paper and write down what I've typed in, or type it if you're working on the computer. A ratio is a comparison of two numbers by division. Feel free to pause the video to write that in. When we talk about ratios, we're talking about a relationship between numbers. So let's look at example 1 on your math paper. The co-ed soccer team has 4 times as many boys on it as it has girls. We say the ratio of the number of boys to the number of girls on the team is, and you see it's written here, with a 4, a colon, and a 1. We read this as 4 to 1. Sometimes it's written with a 4 and a colon and a 1, and other times it's written with a 4, the word 2, and then a 1, or written as all words. All of those are acceptable ways of representing ratios. Now, if we take these and we put them into a table, we'll come over here, we'll insert a table, and let's take this information. Let's take the boys, because they said that first, the girls, and let's take a total number, and let's go down a few more. Okay, so if we take this, and again, order is important when we're talking about these because we certainly want to be clear. It talks about the number of boys to the number of girls. So we'll put boys first, and then girls. And at the end, as I mentioned, we will do total number of players. Go ahead and take a minute to make a list like this, a table like this on your paper as well. When we talk about the number of boys, it said that there were 4. We talked about the number of girls, it said that there were 1. The total number of players then, if we add boys and girls, because that's all there is 5. Now on some teams, there are 5, for instance, on basketball, on a co-ed basketball team. But when we're talking about even a co-ed basketball team, you want to have people to sub in. So that might not, these numbers might not be the best ones. So let's go a little higher. If we added another girl, we could multiply that by 4, and we would have 8 boys. See, if we had 4 boys with 1 girl, we would then have 8 boys with 2 girls. If we added a third girl, we would then multiply that by 4 and get 12. Because of that, we can call this a multiplicative comparison word problem. So I'm going to write that word, multiplicative comparison. And you can take a minute to, again, pause this and write it in on your paper so just have notes. Now, if we were to fill this in, if we had 8 and 2, we would have 10. And the next one, we would have 15. The total number of players. Because this is a multiplicative comparison, and we know this because it says 4 times as many boys as it has girls. The language times really helps us to see why we call it multiplicative comparison. Because we can go from 1 times 4 to get 4, 2 times 4 to get 8, and 3 times 4 to get 12. So that works. Now, let's continue on to our next one. Because suppose the number of boys to the number of girls is 3 to 2. Let's take that and let's insert another table. You can go ahead and draw a table on yours. Let's change it and see why we can't really call this one a multiplicative one comparison. So we'll put boys. It's boys to girls, and that order is very important how we write it. If it says boys first, we need to write boys first. If it says girls first, we need to write girls first. Okay, so our boys was 3, our girls were 2. We really can't say 2 times 3 to get 3. So that's why we can't call it multiplicative. If it was 1, then it would work. But with 2 and 3, it won't. So really, if we added another girl, we would have to add 1.5 boys, if you think about it. So let's look at how we can add boys and girls on our team. First of all, number of team players are still, in this case, 5. We've just separated, the relationship between boys and girls has changed. So let me show you what's called a tape diagram, another way of showing how we can add more boys and girls to our teams. Okay, so as you see here, I have drawn in, I went to the drawing tool and drew in 3 boys. And with 3 boys, we had 2 girls. Now what I'm going to do for this tape diagram is put on 3 more boys and then 2 girls. So as you see, I've added 3 more boys and 2 more girls. So that now gives us a total of 6 boys and 4 girls. For every 3 boys that we add, we have to add 2 girls. Make sense? All right, let's try one more. First, we'll say that we have 10 players altogether. Now I've added 3 more boys and, of course, 2 more girls in this tape diagram. Now I have 3, 6, 9 boys, and I have 2, 4, I have 6 girls. And as you can see, we could then continue on with our table if we wanted to continue adding players. Okay, now here's where it gets interesting. When we talk about ratios of 3 to 2, with a 3 and the colon 2, we can also write it as a fraction. And let me show you what that looks like. Right here we have 3 over 2, where 3 represents the boys and 2 represents the girls. And the bar, the fraction bar, if you remember, means division. That's why when we say that a ratio is a comparison of 2 numbers by division, we're referring to it when we talk about it in terms of its fraction form. Now, what if we only wanted to add 1 girl? I talked about this before. How many boys would we add if we were only adding 1 more girl to the team? If we wanted to keep the ratio the same? Well, first off, to say that something is the same, we're going to use an equal sign. So if we wanted to keep the ratio the same and we added 1 more girl, how many boys would we need to add? Well, we would say 3 divided by 2. And if you know that, if you take something like $3 divided by 2, it's $1.50. So $1.50 is $1 half a dollar. If we did that for boys, it would be 1 boy and half a boy over 2, over 1, which would look like this, which is kind of weird. So if we were to add 1 more girl, it would have to look like this. 1.5 boys over 1 girl, which again is a little bit weird. It's actually not bad math, but it's not what we're used to working with. So let me ask you, what's easier to write? 3 over 2 and 3 out of 2 in this way, or to say it 3, let's make it bigger for us, 3 boys to 2 girls. As you can see, it's easier to write it this way. Remember that another way we could write it is by saying 3 to 2 girls. Notice that I don't write boys over here and I don't write girls over here. That's not necessary when we're talking about ratios. We're only talking about it in this way. And these are the 3 ways that we can write ratios: as a fraction, with a colon, and with the word 2 in front of it, in the middle of it, sorry. We can also write the number 3 in words, T-H-R-E-E, and the number 2 in words, T-W-O, but usually you probably will see it this way. So those are the 3 ways that we can write ratios. This is your introduction. We will now take a look at example 2. Example 2 talks about our class ratios. Now, if you're watching this second after we've already taught the lesson, then you may not have the numbers. So I'm going to give you some numbers to put in just so that you can take a minute to do this yourself. Okay, so what if we had instead, since you can't count the number of boys and girls in your class at this moment, 16 boys and 12 girls. Okay, can you write a ratio of boys to girls in the class? Your ratio could look like 16 with a colon, and then 12 for 16 boys to 12 girls. Or you could have written 16 boys to 12 girls with the word TO in the middle. As I showed you earlier, you could have written it as a fraction as well, but I'm not going to focus on that, right now. What if we look down here though, and it says, write the ratio of the number of girls to the number of boys in our class. Using these same numbers as here, how do you write the new ratio? Take a minute right now, pause the video and do that. Hopefully you have written 12 with a colon, 16, or 12 with the word 16, with the word 2 and 16. For 12 girls to 16 boys, or 12 girls to 16 boys. Noting that since girls came first, we needed to write about girls first. We needed to write the number of girls first. Again, as I explained to you, order is very important. Okay, let's move on down to the recorder ratio for each example that I provide. So I'll write it in, and then you can stop, write the ratio, and see if we got it right. Let's see, let's start with, this is going to look weird when I start doing it, but I'm going to do it anyway. Seven students traveled out of the state this summer. What's the ratio for that? Wait, you'll need another number. Let's look at number 2. Okay, I paused it and wrote it in. If 7 students traveled out of the state this summer, how many did not travel out of the state? And let's give our class a number of 28 students. Out of 28 students, 7 students traveled out of the state this summer. How many did not travel out of the state? Take a minute and figure that out. Okay, so if you did 28 and you took away the 7 that traveled out of the state, you would then have a mess. No. Right over here, you would have 21 students that did not travel out of the state. So to write that in a ratio of students who traveled out of the state with students who did not travel out of the state, our ratio would be 7 students who traveled out of the state to 21 who did not. 7 to 21. That's our ratio. You could also write it as 7 with the word TO in the middle and then 21. Because we didn't want to know how many, we didn't want the number of students, total number of students in our ratio. We just wanted to know the number who traveled out of the state with the number who didn't travel out of the state. And that's our first ratio. Okay, I have written down, or I've typed, the number 3. If there are 15 students who have at least one sibling, that's a brother or a sister, have at least one, maybe they have more, but there are 15 of your students that have at least one siblings. Out of the original 28, how many are only children, and can we write that in a ratio? So take a minute to figure that out. Okay, hopefully you've done 28, take away 15, and that would be 13. So if 15 students have at least one sibling, it'll be 15 students with one sibling, colon, to 13 students that are only children. And these are made up numbers. In your actual classroom, you might find that this is actually different. Another way of writing that you remember is 15 to 13. All right, let's try one more. So for number 5, if there were 9 students that said math was their favorite class out of our original 28, how many would not consider math their favorite class? Take a minute and figure that out right now. Well, you have 9 colon, and you should have figured out it's 19 students. So 9 to 19. Again, that can be written as 9 with the word 2 and then 19. So how many would consider the number of students who consider math their favorite class compared to the number of students who would not consider math their favorite class is 9 students to 19 students, written as you see here. Okay, your job now is to come up with your own ratio. Compare two things, just like we did up here, in words, and then write the number right here. Exercise 2 asks us to then, using words, describe a ratio that represents each one. So if we had 1 to 12, what would that be? Go ahead and do exercise 1 on your own, and then exercise 2 on your own as well, and then we'll review. Well, the last one that I want to look at before you go is the lesson summary. On your paper, it states that a ratio is an ordered pair of numbers, and that's what we've worked with. Here above, you see these ratios. These are two numbers, and they're in order based on what they were asked about. Was it boys versus girls? Was it pizza to soda? Or pieces of pizza to soda? Was it number of students to pieces of pizza? Over here, it's important to note that both of these numbers are not 0. So these numbers are not going to be 0. A ratio is denoted with, which means denoted means it's written as A to B, which could be any number A, and a different number B, to indicate the order of the numbers. The number A is the first number, and B is the second number. That just goes to talk about when I talked about ordering. Ordering is important. If we talk about boys first and then girls, then we have to write the numbers in order. That's what that means. The order of the number is important to the meaning of the ratio. Switching the numbers changes the relationship. If I said boys to girls, as we did up here, and you gave me the 12 to 16 here, that wouldn't be boys to girls. That wouldn't be correct. It would be girls to boys in that case, which would be this one that was asked. So you have to make sure you pay attention to if they're talking about which one comes first when you're writing the numbers. All right, now you can complete some work. The problem set that you see below is, in fact, your homework. Good luck.